Cerrone has got a serious problem facing southpaws.
Yep.
If you go back on his record and you look at his losses, I'm shooting it off the top of my head. I don't know exactly. Let's say he has 12, 13, 14 losses in his career out of 50 fights. And I would say that 9 to 10 of them have been against southpaws. And if you look at guys that either are southpaw or switch stance into southpaw, Anthony Pettis is a guy that he went southpaw against Cerrone.
Yep.
Body kick ends the fight. And, RDA is southpaw. There's a lot of guys, when you look at guys that give Cerrone problems, southpaws are a problem for him. But there's no doubt in my mind, and I really have, I think Conor gets not enough credit for his ground game. Mm-hmm. I do think he's got a good ground game. I think he's solid down there. It's just a matter of the guys that he's been facing. When you talk about guys that have gotten him to the ground, Nate Diaz has got a real ground game. Okay, we're talking a guy that's got a series of submission victories in MMA. He's a real black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is good, and it isn't even the element of how good he is on the ground. Conor was tired, and that's what got him in that fight, that first fight against Diaz. He fell off the cliff. He went past that point, and when you're tired, I don't care who you are, you're going to go down. And then he had the loss to Khabib, but he did a lot of really good stuff in that loss to Khabib. But if I'm going to point out a spot that I think Donald can beat Conor, it's if he can get him to the ground. On the ground, Cerrone is fantastic. People have, I don't want to say they don't know, but I don't think he gets the credit or the recognition based upon a guy that likes to stand up and fight. Yeah. His ground game is nasty. Yeah. He has got great transitions on his ground game, and if he can get that fight to the ground and just work on Conor down there, work at that, use your ground and pound if you want, but set up the submissions. He has got the ground game to beat Conor on the ground.
Okay, so two things. Yes, I agree with you 100%. I agree that the best way for him to win this fight is on the ground, and I think he has a good chance of getting in there. I also think that where Conor is weak is in the clinch, knees, elbows, and the size of Donald Cerrone of being 6 foot, 6'1", somewhere in there. If he's able to push Conor to the fence and dirty box him, grind him out, do all those things, keep his weight on him, because let's not forget the next part of this whole thing was it's at 170.
Which I think is hysterical because God knows Donald Cerrone is not too big for Conor, but George Masvidal is.
Yeah.
Just like, it's kind of funny because I honestly think it's kind of leading up to if Conor gets past Donald, then I do think George Masvidal might be his next opponent.
Yeah, I think
that's a fight that they might put together.
Would be a phenomenal fight. And
I'd love to see it.
I think this fight, and I think it's a mirror image of the Cerrone fight and Masvidal. It's a mirror image, except that Masvidal is a way better wrestler, and potentially it could get the fight down to the ground. I think a lot easier. Look, Cowboy Cerrone is his wrestling. I don't think it's not as good as Masvidal's, but his stand up is good. His kicking is phenomenal. His jiu-jitsu, like you were saying, is drastically underestimated. His submissions are so damn good. And we saw it with Mike Perry a little bit when I believe he swung for the armbar, switched over, went belly down on the armbar, I think is what it was. Yeah. Look, he's phenomenal. He's phenomenal on the ground. And people were talking about, it's Cerrone's on a losing skid. He's older, this and that. I'm like, look, man.
He is older. He is on a losing skid. That happens.
Yeah, that's part of the game. And I guess that's, I just feel that he has he does have a chance, but I agree with you on the southpaw thing. I agree with you on that he is sometimes weak to the body. Conor has a phenomenal body kick, a little toe kick to the body, a little push kick to the body, a little back. He likes to throw that rear body kick as well. He mixes it up from the body to the head. I don't know if flexibility is going to be an issue if he can get that foot up to the head on Cowboy, because Cowboy being another, 2 inches taller than him, I believe, an inch or two. So, I'm sure he can, but we'll have the same pace on it. We'll have the same speed, the power on it to get it there. Look, I think this, I agree with you that I agree that it is the perfect fight for both of them. My concern is that Donald has a really good chance of winning this fight at 170. And if he,
I think the 170 benefits Cowboy more than it benefits McGregor. I do too.
I have no idea why Conor McGregor would have thought that this was a good idea. No idea.
The only thing I could think of was exactly what I said, in that I think he's setting it up, saying, Dana came out saying that, George Masvidal's way too big for Conor. And if you wanna push Conor towards anything, tell him he can't do it. And I think that in a little bit of a nutshell of what's going on here, I think Conor's saying, okay, I want that fight at 170, and then I want Masvidal next at 170 because I'm going to show you what too big is. Now, does that mean he can beat him? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I think in Conor needs things to grab a hold of and have in that targeting system that he has, because you look at what he did throughout his career. He called a lot of his own shots. And when I say called, I'm not saying he set up his own fights, but when that fight was set up, he called exactly what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. And it worked for him a lot of, the way throughout his career. And that's what made him, Mystic Mac. He's got the ability to fight anyone. When we talk about size, George Masvidal is not any bigger than Conor McGregor. Yeah. He's not. George Masvidal used to fight 155. I think Conor was the UFC lightweight champion at 155, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Just because he came from 145, he was a skeleton at 145.
Yeah,
he looked like he was a concentration camp victim. So I think it's good that he's not going back down to the featherweight. I don't think he can. I think 155 is a weight he can make, but I think 170 is a good weight as far as, hey, this fight, it doesn't matter if you put them. Cowboy fights at lightweight and he fights at welterweight. What does it matter? It's healthier for both of them. Let them fight at that 170, and it does set up, if Conor beats Cowboy, which he could do, but Cowboy could definitely beat him. But if he gets past him, I think you got that Masvidal fight sitting there, and that's an interesting fight.
Yeah, I feel like the Masvidal fight is an easier fight than him fighting Khabib again. So it makes sense.
You can't put him against Khabib again.
No. But
you've got to see something that says he has a chance this time.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm not saying he doesn't have a chance. I know he has a chance. Everyone does. But he's got to prove it to the fan base for that to be something that they want to see.
Well, there was a little bit of a buzz that I was hearing that he was potentially going to fight Islam Makhachev, which he was also a southpaw, by the way. But then obviously now that he's fighting Cowboy Cerrone, which kind of threw a little wrench in there. But in my mind, I had heard through some of the people that there was a little bit of talk of potentially it being Islam. And if it was going to be Islam, and if he was able to beat Islam, then it made sense to give him the Khabib fight next, because that is his teammate. Not to mention Islam was a very good wrestler, phenomenal sambo player. I believe he's a 3 or 4 time, maybe even a 5-time world sambo champion in his whatever weight class it is. I'm not familiar with how that all breaks down. But that would have been something I could see. Okay, next, now you give him Khabib. But if they're going another route, which it seems like they are, like you're saying, towards maybe the Masvidal fight, I could see them going Cerrone, then Masvidal if he does beat Cerrone. But I just don't want to get ahead. I don't want to get ahead too much. I'm just I'm simply saying,
pull in the future.
Cowboy could be having a red panty night. Just like
he could disrupt the whole thing for him. Yes,
he could ruin
That's the best part.
And people, I don't think people understand. At 170, his performances have been better at 170 than they have been at 155. On top of it, he will physically be, I think, stronger and bigger than Conor McGregor. Clinch, knees, elbows, dirty boxing, getting in that, weighing on him against the fence, controlling him in the clinch, those type of things we have seen in the past. Nate Diaz was able to hold Conor McGregor against the fence a couple times, and do some little bit of dirty boxing in there. Nate Diaz is not physically a strong person. He's good at jiu-jitsu. He's got a couple little tricks up his sleeves, but physically strong, he is not. And we saw that with the Masvidal fight. Cerrone has the ability and the capability to press him to the fence, control Conor against the fence a little bit, and land some dirty boxing, some knees, some elbows, those kind of things to really kind of start to maybe lump him up, cut him up, make him fight for that position, take some steam off of that straight left and those kicks.
It's exactly what you were talking about. If one of the things that I can tell you, just being in the cage with Conor, he controls distance so well. he understands that distance. He understands what he has to give and how far he needs to come forward to land his shot off of his counters. If Cerrone tries to play that outside distance game, he's going to lose. Just telling you straight out. He cannot be in that type of fight with Conor. He's going to end up getting beat by the accuracy and that control of that distance that Conor is so good at. It's, everyone's got their little gifts, and it is a gift that Conor has in understanding exactly where that distance needs to be at. So just like you're saying, Donald Cerrone needs to crush that distance. He needs to press Conor and create a crush of that space that Conor is now consistently backing off and trying to circle away to create that distance again. And he's got to then crush it again. And that's, it's effort, and you're putting yourself in danger to do it. But if he can crush that distance and make it a boxing range fight where he can then get into clinch situations, that is exactly the fight that he needs to do to win that fight.